Good evening. My name's Holly Hopkins. Welcome to a Forward Meet the Poet with Pascale Petit. She's in conversation with Kim Moore. I can see that our audience is just starting to log in. And while we're waiting for everyone to get here and settle down, I might tell you a bit about how the chat function works, and maybe some people will say hello. So if you've not used a Zoom webinar before and you want to join in the chat, if you hover over our faces, the face of me speaking now, you'll see some options along the bottom, and one of them is a little icon with a speech bubble marked chat. If you press that, you'll see a sidebar opening up, and you can type messages in there such as who you are and where you're listening in from. I'll start us off. Oh, we've got someone coming from Dartmouth already, and who's that? That's Lauren and Julie, and oh, it's already, we've got so many coming. I will also put my own thing in there, which is where you can buy the book directly from Bloodaxe, because I must do that. So that's in there. Fantastic. And if you want to ask questions or put comments in the chat during the event, you can do that. Now, I can see the numbers are starting to level off. So tonight we'll be hearing from Pascale. She's reading from Tiger Girl, which is shortlisted for the Forward Prize for Best Collection. The event will take about 45 minutes, and questions will be put to Pascale by Kim Moore, who is one of the judges on the 5-strong panel of judges we've got this year. Kim's first collection, The Art of Falling, was published by Seren and won the Geoffrey Faber Memorial Prize. She has won a Northern Writers Award, an Eric Gregory Award, and the Geoffrey Dermer Prize. Her pamphlet, If We Could Speak Like Wolves, was a winner in the Poetry Business Pamphlet Competition. And she very recently, congratulations Kim, has been awarded her PhD for research in poetry and everyday sexism. She's working on her second collection, and along with Claire Shaw, she's a co-director of the Kendal Poetry Festival. So I'm very pleased to be welcoming Kim Moore today. Hello, Kim.
Hello. You'll all be glad to know, if you've seen the other two interviews, that now I've got my PhD, the interview's gone up another intelligence level. I'm not going to witter anymore. It's going to be great. So I'm really excited to be talking to Pascale Petit tonight about her work. I'm going to try and, there you go. So Pascale Petit trained as a sculptor at the Royal College of Art and didn't publish her first collection until she was in her mid-40s. Since then, over the course of 8 collections, she's been shortlisted for the T.S. Eliot Prize 4 times, and her 7th collection, Mama Amazonica, was the first poetry book to win the RSL Ondaatje Prize. And now, of course, Tiger Girl is shortlisted for the Forward Prize for Best Collection. Throughout her career, Pascale has carved out a space for herself and her unique, utterly original poetics. Her poetry often concerns itself with psychological and physical trauma and violence, and how poetry can both bear witness and be transformational. In Tiger Girl, we see a new departure in Pascale's work as she leaves behind the Amazonian rainforests, which in her own words have obsessed her for the last 25 years, and instead explores the jungles of India and her grandmother's Indian heritage. This collection still explores trauma and violence in the family, but these themes are set against and interact with environmental concerns such as deforestation, poaching, and species extinction. Daljit Nagra, reviewing Tiger Girl recently on Front Row on Radio 4, said, "I think this might be her best book so far because of this complexity of a family in crisis against a planet in crisis." Her poetry is tender, compelling, vivid with colour and imagery, and completely original. Reading a collection by Pascale is to be invited into a world where it is usual and totally normal, in fact, to come face to face with a tiger, to dream a forest, and for a grandmother to tell the future. In her work, place is not just the setting of the poem, but a spirit that moves through the language. I'm going to hand over to Pascale now, who's going to read her first poem. And now there should be rounds of applause and cheers and screams, and I'm sure there is, but we can't hear them. So welcome, Pascale.
Oh, thank you very much for that introduction, Kim. And hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm going to start by reading the first poem in the book. her gypsy clothes. I used to wonder why my grandmother stared so hard into the fire, even after I found the cardboard box at the back of the coal house and drew out of it flame, chili, emerald, sequin sparks, embroidered mirrors orbiting wraparound skirts, shawls trimmed with seed pearls, silver bangles like Saturn's rings. Her embarrassment when she caught me trying them on and explained they were her gypsy rags to tell fortunes at fairs. Only at her funeral did the story come out. Her birth in Rajasthan to her father's maid. I think now of my great-grandmother dancing for her master's guests, grateful to have her baby brought up as his wife's. I think of the coal grease, black dust, and memories that burn slow as anthracite. How some colours don't fade, however deep they're buried. How even a dowry of rags smouldering in a box can flare in a winter grate. And how to own the country of her birth, a woman might have to wear a fire.
Wow, that's an extraordinary poem, Pascale, and an extraordinary story kind of wrapped up in it as well. I realised as you were reading as well that I forgot to show off about my copy of the book. There it is. I think it's only, is it officially available yet?
Well, the official publication date is Thursday, I think, the 3rd.
Thursday.
But it's available from Bloodaxe.
But so, sorry, we're going to talk about the cover later, I think, but I just wanted to kind of to flash it. And then to ask you the question about the poem, about, this figure of the grandmother in the poem, Her Gypsy Clothes, that you've just read. So who is Tiger Girl? Or can you talk about the figure of Tiger Girl and the grandmother? And
well, Tiger Girl is my grandmother in the book, and I didn't know that she was half Indian when I lived with her. She brought me up as a baby from the age of 2 months to 2 years, and then at the age of 7 until I was 14. And she absolutely saved my life. The rest of the time I was in Paris with my parents or homes and things. And she used to tell me this story about being a baby herself in a tent in the jungle, and how she was on her own and a tiger entered and came up to her cot and did not eat her. And so this story gave me permission to go to India and explore her heritage, and especially to go after wild tigers, because I'd only seen them in zoos.
wow, that's an amazing story. It's almost like well, it feels mythic, that story of the tiger coming face to face with the tiger. I also wanted to ask you about a lot of the questions that I want to ask kind of linked to other things as well. And I mentioned that you trained as a sculptor, but it really struck me with this collection in particular, which probably shouldn't have surprised me, but the importance of seeing and looking and witnessing in your poetry. So both the kind of witnessing of ecological trauma, but also child abuse of women. So maybe you could say something about how those two things are kind of interlinked or interwoven sometimes they feel like they're kind of compressed on top of each other. Maybe you could say a little bit about the relationship between those two things.
Yeah, I think that the exploitation of women in the world is rather like the rape of the natural world, which is what is going on. And so yes, I do juxtapose those two things. And as for looking and seeing, I don't have any literary training. I don't have any training as a poet, but I did spend 6 years at art school, and there my training was in looking. You could never really see something. You had to, this is what I remember being told, is you've got to keep looking. What do you really see, you know, and you'll, what is really there, and those kind of mysteries, and they are mysteries, and what's happening in the eye, and how can you communicate that, what you're actually seeing. So I think that that may be why when I write a poem, usually an image centers in my head. And once I've got that image, it never quite goes away. So when I'm writing a poem, I'm trying to make that image physical so that other people can see it. So that it's almost like there's visions in my head. And I've got to try and make it alive on the page.
Wow, I love that description of your writing process, because one of the questions that came in by email before just this afternoon was a question about how you begin writing a poem, and I think that's a fantastic description of having visions in your head, and that kind of leads us on to the next poem, which I think you're going to read, In the Forest, which you had an interesting story of how you wrote this poem that you told me a couple of days ago. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, well, I went to 3 national parks in India, and I went to Ranthambore Park in Rajasthan because my grandmother was born in Rajasthan, and then I went to parks in these are very large forests in Madhya Pradesh, and most of the time I spent in Bandhavgarh. And the last time I went to India, I went to Tala Zone. But all the time, of course, I was also researching and finding out what is the situation with tigers in India, and because they have most of the tigers in the world. And 100 years ago, there were 100,000 tigers in the world, and now there are under 4,000 in the whole world, and about just under 3,000 are in India. So I did see a lot, and they are on the increase in Madhya Pradesh, but the forests are shrinking. So the tigers are in competition with each other and frequently kill each other. But I also saw that the guards who live in little huts in the forest at night, and they go around, they only have a stick, they don't have a gun. And all they have to defend them from poachers, or indeed from tigers or elephants, is this stick. And I wondered what it would be like to go into the forest at night. And that's what I do in this poem, In the Forest. It is quite a long poem, so I'm going to read it. In the Forest. In the forest, I saw a man sewing an owl's eyes shut. The owl was on a leash, and the man pulled it to make it flutter and attract songbirds to mob his decoy. He told me how much he could earn from warblers in cages. I wondered which was worse, the blind eagle owl or thrushes glued to sticks. The deeper I went, the more I saw. What is worse, asked the sky, a girl with sewn eyes or glued lips? The deeper I walked, the harder I looked, although it was dark and there were no stars. 4,000 rupees for a barn owl to be sacrificed for Diwali, to light up the dark with dark. I went even deeper into the core, patrolled by forest guards on tuskers, but it was night and the bulls were chained. I saw another man who led me to a cave, which he called his vault, and there was a tigress inside, giving birth to striped gold. I said my eyes are stitched and my lips sealed, and he placed coins in my hand, said it was jungle currency. And I knew then I was holding the eyes of cubs. I said to the poacher, I'm not from here, I do not judge, but the eyes muled in my hands. So I ran through every coppice and every clearing and looked at the moon whose eye was sewn shut. I passed the firefly tree and the flame of the forest, and I swear there were leopards dangling from their boughs. I came to the crocodile bark tree and the ghost tree as the first rays peered through night's lids. But the sun couldn't look at what I had seen. The sun couldn't wake the sambar, cheetal, antelope, or gazelle. So I was the only witness of those luminous herds with fire trees on the altars of their brows, all sacrificed for good fortune. Goddess Lakshmi, forgive them as you ride your owls. And that was long ago now, but still I'm running through that forest, watched by the moon eye and the sun eye. But now it's a forest of peeling red bark, of leopards with paws sewn off, stuffed into pockets for luck. While in the tantric market, a trader slices a tiger, giving it new stripes. One stripe for a lakh of rupees. I run through thickets of dust trees until I reach the realm of the sloth bear, where a cub clings to his electrocuted mother. And here I find a man laughing as he hooks a cane through the cub's nose and teaches him to dance. The night is black as bear fur, its muzzle bleeding after eating honey baited with explosives. How many rupees for the galaxies in a gallbladder? I run more slowly now, afraid of traps for my ankles, snares for my neck. You could say my flight is a jerky dance, the stars my audience with shielded eyes, because the ringmaster has arrived in heaven. With his flaming hoops, archangels must leap through. Where are the angels with fangs that sever windpipes? Angel fangs around a black hole's neck, bought in the black market. Goddess Durga, who rides the sky tiger, forgive us. You could say the stick that makes my head jerk is a bad branch from the tree of life. But I swear there's a tree of good, if only I could find it, for the cub that survived, whose claws are new moons that light up my path. And even though it's day now, the forest has drawn blinds over itself. I climb a hide, and as I climb, the trees grow higher. Banyan boles pierce the ladder and hiss like snakes with skeleton leaves. I pass choirs of langurs with silver fur and ebony faces, their echoing barks getting louder. But even up here, vendors are shouting, 10 crore for a white tiger, 5 crore for a black leopard. Here, where the blacksmith forges leg traps in the night market, here too there are trees with scratch marks, but no tigers. Unless you count the meat without skin, all bones pulled out. For just one rib of barg can buy a cow. Let me tell you what I saw. Let me whisper it. I saw an archangel with its paw mangled in a trap for what seemed an aeon. I saw a man waiting for it to weaken while he ate his meal on a teak leaf. And when he had finished, I saw him whittle a stick. And when the archangel was too weak to move, he jabbed his stick into its mouth so no one would hear its music. I saw him pick up a branch and batter the spine. And I knew then that the branch was from the tree of secrets. For how else did he know where creatures of light walk on our earth? Their footprints that glow on the path saying, this way to my kingdom. Then the man got out his skinning knife. Half an hour it took him to flay the hide intact with its arabesques of bulldozed gardens. If it were possible to remake the creature from its pelt, I would do it. But the man sold the pelt because his family was hungry. And I vowed then never to eat again. I descended the spiral ladder, and with bamboo thorns and plant fiber, I sewed my eyes shut. And with resin from the tree of love, I glued my lips.
Wow. After talking about witnessing and looking, and then all of those references to eyes, either being open or glued shut or stitched shut throughout that poem, and it also struck me you're walking a really a kind of tightrope between witnessing but trying to hold back judgment, which I think you manage it really well in that poem. It's a difficult path, I think.
It is feeling like you're a stranger in a place. How can you judge? You don't know what the situation is, and you see how much the people need the money. And I heard a lot of those accounts from a forest guard who had been a poacher and who was converted to guarding the tigers, and these very straightforward accounts of what he had done.
Wow, my brain, I was going to ask you something else, and then when you said that about speaking to someone who had been a poacher and then had swapped, I kind of got distracted by that thought, by thinking about that thought. Yeah, that's it's an amazing poem. Yeah, I'm finding it really hard to ask you questions, Pascale, after you finish reading the poem, because I just want to sit here going, wow. That's what I was going to ask. A question came in this afternoon, and it's a bit unfair, so maybe you don't want to answer this, or you can think about it. But Chris Phillips said, have you a particular reader in mind when writing the collection? And I was just listening to that poem, and at one point you say, let me tell you what I saw, let me whisper it. And when you got to that point then in the reading, I felt like you were addressing me, the reader, or us, the audience, directly. So as if you were kind of bringing these stories from another place and talking to us directly. But yeah, so I was wondering, do you have a particular reader in mind? Who are you talking to in
when I'm writing
poem, then across the book as well?
Yeah, when I'm writing the poems, I don't know. I think I just get into the world of the poems. But afterwards, now that I've written the book, and I ask myself, who is it for? and who are these accounts for?
Mm.
And trying to show the wonder of what a tiger is and how terrible it is that they may vanish. It's a terrible thing to say, but I wish I couldn't imagine a world where there will not be any more animals and forests and healthy seas. And, you know, so I want to capture what it's like and what it's like to fight against that, really.
Mm. Mm.
But trying to look forwards to what the Earth's going to be like. Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, and I think that responsibility of looking and kind of bearing witness as well, and going back to when you were first talking about being a sculptor and being taught to look and not look away, that really came through in that poem as well. That kind of keep looking, don't turn away. I'm just looking at the comments coming in. Someone's asked, are we still able to ask questions? Yes, please put your questions up and I will try and get in as many as we can. That's a great, I can only see the first bit of your name, Zana. I'll come back to that question maybe after this next poem. So this poem, I think, is one of the more hopeful in the book, the green bee eater. I don't know if you want to say a little bit about hope, either before or after you read the poem.
Yeah, hope is so crucial. As I said, I don't want to imagine this world that doesn't have animals and lush forests, but yeah, I'm an optimist. You know, I think we can do this. We can stop it kind of happening, and I think one of the reasons why I might be an optimist is because, you know, I had these terrible parents, as I've written about in rather a lot of books. But I was actually saved by my grandmother, and she didn't have to. She didn't have to save me. She didn't have to show me how to love. And she was tired. She was getting on, and she was living on her own in a council flat in house in mid Wales. But she did, and I owe her that. And maybe we owe ourselves also to be hopeful.
Yeah.
So the amazing thing about the Indian forests, which I totally fell in love with, is that not only do they have tigers and leopards and sloth bears and stuff, but they also have amazing birds. So throughout the book, there are these little birds and deer as well. I love deer.
So would you like to read the green bee eater?
Yes. And I did go to Jaipur. It's the one city I went to. Green bee eater. More precious than all the gems of Jaipur, the green bee eater. If you see one singing tree, 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 with his space black bill and rufous cap, his robes all shades of emerald, like treetops glimpsed from a plain. His blue cheeks, black eye mask, and the delicate tail streamer, like a plume of smoke. You might dream of the forests that once clothed our flying planet, and perhaps his singing is a spell to call our forests back, tree by tree by tree.
I love that language is the hope as well, isn't it? The kind of
Well,
believe the
yeah,
language can.
it is. And that poem came from an ornithologist's description of the green bee-eater's song as tree, tree, tree. So it was a gift.
Yeah, brilliant.
He sings tree.
Yeah. I'm gonna hold on. I'm just scanning back up to the chat. So Zana says, this is a great question and one I would have definitely want to know the answer to. So she says, you've had a long career. How have you felt yourself develop as a writer? Is she always seeking to evolve or go deeper into the writing she's always done? And I think more with you than maybe any other writer that I can think of, the books feel like the one collection kind of leads to another. It's like a beautiful kind of tapestry, and they feel so closely kind of interwoven together.
Yeah, I mean, I never know where they're going, and I didn't know, for example, that I'd write loads of books all about the Amazon rainforest, and that I would go deeper into the Peruvian Amazon after having been in the Venezuelan Amazon. And yeah, that just led from seeing Angel Falls, and one thing led outwards. And the thing is that it's so absolutely teeming with life, and the people there as well, they're teeming with myths and stories and knowledge about the plants and the trees and things that we really could learn from. And I found this also in India with the Gond and the Bega, the tribal peoples who did live in the forests and which have now been kind of expelled into the buffer zones because there can be no habitation apart from the forest guards in their little huts, among in the pristine forest. So I have no idea where I'm going next. So it's like feeling my way in the dark. It is like being in a forest, really.
There's so much I could ask you, because yeah, it'll be interesting to see probably not interesting, maybe kind of torturous for you to see what lockdown does to your poetry and your writing. But I want to ask you to read another poem because of time.
Yeah.
And someone's asked, can you speak a little more about the gypsy, in inverted commas, identity of your grandma? Do you feel this is part of your ethnic identity today? And I thought that would lead nicely into the next poem you're going to read, which is Her Globe, where you talk about your grandmother, another brilliant story about her having second sight. And I wonder if you want to say a little bit about that before you read the poem.
Well, my grandmother's heritage and story is a mystery because it was a secret. It really was. So I don't really know. And but she did, however, dress up as a gypsy. And I used to go with her when she used to go to fairs in Wales, country fairs. And so she was she'd be in a tent, the gypsy tent, and she would tell fortunes. And she proved to me once that she really could tell the future. She said, it was in the morning, she said, I've just seen Ned the postman go down the lane and his feet weren't touching the ground, which tells me he's a ghost. He's just died. And there was no post that morning. And later she discovered he died. That was kind of frightening, really. I think she had a frightening kind of second sight.
Wow.
And so she used props, and I don't think she didn't actually need them. But I was very interested in the idea of this globe that she used, because the crystal globe is like an alternative kind of planet or vision. It's like, you know, I've always been very struck by the astronauts' first sight of Earthrise, and always trying to think of the Earth in that way. And so I could see her with this Earth on the table. Shall I read?
Yes, yes. Sorry, I'm sitting there thinking about Ned the postman.
I know, and it was terrifying. I thought, oh my God, that was, you know, really terrifying.
Yeah, yeah. It's terrifying as an adult, but to hear that story as a child.
Yeah, I think I was about 10 or something then.
Wow.
Oh, and there's a reference in here to two tigresses, Bitri and Banbei. So Banbei is the mother and Bitri is the daughter, and they live, actually Bitri has now expelled her mother Banbei, but they live in a ravine in Tala Zone in Bandhavgarh National Park. Her globe, this amber emerald globe, its metamorphic luster, the chrysoprase of its chatoyant forests, crystal thickets echoing with alarm calls, streaked with ultraviolet urine, territorial scat, hotspots where a cheetah's hooves have sparked. Every time she tells the future is a ride into the convex mirror of a tiger's eye, glowing in the tented dark. Her customer, just a flicker on the sea's horizon. Your grandmother was a witch, my mother says, deep and sly. I evade her grasp by sliding into the scrying ball's fire. Cicadas shrill in the branched tunnel above me, and the hawk cuckoo drills his brain fever chant, a rising scream auguring rain. Monsoon season, when central India's national parks close and the jeep tracks flood quicksilver. Tigers lounge in flash pools with their cubs. Bitri, the ravine tigress, abandons her cave to splash in the shallows. Shy Bitri, meaning the deep place. Screened fissure where unnamed trees thrust through glass groves of torrential showers towards the light. Even her mother Banbei is flushed out, descendant of Sita, pride of Bandhavgarh, the first to survive long enough to found a dynasty before the poachers got to her. My grandmother sits in the fair's fortune-telling booth, decked in her gypsy veils. They whirl around her like cumulus clouds at sunset. I hunch in the corner while flame-backed woodpeckers flash past to drum on lightning trees. The last ribbon of altar cirrus is a paradise flycatcher's tail streamers. The crystal ball pulses in Gran's hands. Her face floats on the surface, then is sucked in, as if our earth has inner globes nested inside, whirlpools of spiraling planets, opening their diamond mines, and she, the only adventurer to brave their deeps. Your Gran was a witch, Mother repeats, and you take after her. I stare into space until the globe appears, can feel it heavy on my lap. Soon I'm back in the forest maze where Gran is my guide. With all her power, I pass into the future, leaving only a trace of myself, like dust on the surface of a mirror.
Wow. I absolutely love that poem, and I think the kind of rhythm of the poem, you can't, if anyone's following along, it's kind of in a long column, and compared to the other poems you've read, it had a lot more white space in them, and you could feel the rhythm of that one kind of, well, one of the lines, every time she tells the future is a ride, and it felt like we were on a ride with the lines. It was great. Wow. And that kind of, I wanted to ask you, in that poem you're talking about, and you said your grandmother saved you, and there's a line, I'm back in the forest maze where Gran is my guide. And I wanted to ask you about kind of not the poetry guides, or in the interview I did with Rachel Long, we were talking about who gives you permission as a poet. And your name was one of the names that came up. I can't remember in the interview, but definitely in the talk when we were talking beforehand, as a poet that gives younger poets permission to write, not just your subject matter, but giving yourself permission to keep looking and not looking away. So I was wondering if there's poets that give you permission. Do you just do it by yourself?
Well, it did, as you said, it took me a long time to publish my first collection, so I did struggle, and I did have lots of discouragement, in fact, and there weren't that many women, you know, as there are now, thankfully, writing. Les Murray always encouraged me from the early days, and that's been a life belt, I think. But there was one thing that really got to me, gave me the courage to write about families and taboo things you're really not supposed to write about. And that was, as I was saying to you the other day, I was in a pub and there was a book on the table, and it was The Father by Sharon Olds. And these people over there said, oh, look, that looks like a really interesting book. And then someone said, oh, but it's poetry. They picked it up. They said, it's poems. And someone else said, no, but look at the title. It's called The Father. And that really kind of rang with me. It told me that actually, you know, some poets or critics might tell you can't do what you're doing, but maybe, you know, people will be interested. And yeah, but in any case, I had to write what I had to write, you know. I have to write what I have to write.
I love that there was a poetry book in the pub that you frequent. That never happens to me in Barrow, ever.
Oh, I think
never any poetry books.
Yeah, I think it was one of our group had left it on the table by mistake.
Yeah,
it wasn't other people there.
That's Pascale. We've only got 2 minutes left. It's gone too quickly, hasn't it? And I think we should finish on a poem. Do you know which one you would like to read to finish off?
I think the last one we were going to read, which was Walking Fire.
Yeah, brilliant.
So I'll read that. And this is the last poem that I wrote for the book. And it came simply from the phrase walking fire, which in fact my husband said. He said, you know, tigers are like walking fire. And that started off the poem. Walking fire. It's high summer and the grass hisses where the tigress treads, her pads soundless on the tinder track. Her flanks sway, the cubs cool in their amniotic sacs. She is a walking fire, her glance a flare that singes my lashes. I seem to be watching her through a veil of snow or ash, the sky as I know it falling, falling. And when her face comes into focus, it's like the membrane between us tears. She brushes against the jeep as she saunters past on the long patrol of her realm, her fur dripping after a soak in the stream. Can you see me, Gran? I ask. I'm as close to a tiger as you once were, but I won't touch. A baby wouldn't alarm her, but I would. You're sitting opposite saying, it was like staring at a frozen sun. Your eyes grow coal black as you think of the day you were left alone in a tent. I'm staring at the fire in your living room, anthracite glowing with forests of our coal age, flickers of fern, horsetail, club moss, embers spitting onto the mat like saber-tooths springing from a cave. That split second when we startle and everyone is still alive. Even my first cat, not yet given stripes by the combine harvester as he lay curled in corn. I'd walk over hot coals to get back to you, just to ask one more question about your tiger. But you were only a baby, and probably you only remembered remembering, not the thing itself. Just as now, I'm only half remembering the ghost of your fire, where we sit like two ice age queens, worshipping the heat, while underneath us, the compressed beds of trees buckle under mountain building. The tigress has passed by now and is ahead on the path, rolling over the sand, belly up, reveling in her power. Already she spawned 3 sets of cubs, and they forged their own empires. When she leaps onto a stag, the whole world slows to hear the grass speak from inside the deer. Slows enough to listen to what trees have to say with the mouths of storms through their leaves. When I firewalked through the dawn of your death, my feet scorched on the cinder path to your house, when I've opened the gate of your garden, like opening the gate to Tala Zone, where wildlife is almost safe, I will land in your armchair in the deepest cave. And then, Gran, we will talk again about the forests that once reigned on earth, the mysteries of beasts who passed through them, the flames of their spirits surging under fur, not one spark escaping. How even their roars are relics of when the great woods blazed. How it was we who discovered fire, and with our knowledge lit the fuse.
That's such a fantastic reading, Pascale. I'm sorry we had a few more poems lined up to read, but we got gossiping too much. I'm going to hand over to Holly because I've not got corona cough. I'm just, I don't know, choking on a crumb that I was shoving into my mouth earlier. Holly, jump in quick.
Jump in quick. Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Pascale. I feel like in a year when we've all been confined and cabin fevered, it was particularly a delight to journey across India with you and into the forests tonight. So thank you. And thank you everybody who asked a question, whether you sent it in advance or did it off the hoof or you added to the chat and said hello. It was really lovely for you to join in. Sadly, that was the last in this series of For Meet the Poet. Before you go, remember, I've put a link to where you can buy Pascale's book. It's in the chat, coming out soon, but apparently already available. So official publication date is, when is it, Pascale, remind me?
The 3rd, Thursday, I think.
So we celebrate on Thursday, but you can put in your orders to Bloodaxe now. So do have a look for that.
Oh yeah, it's available from Bloodaxe now.
And whilst this is the last in our series, this series of For Meet the Poets, there's still so much more to come. Next week on Thursday, it's publication day for the Forward Book of Poetry. So we will be celebrating the 50 highly commended poets who are in the anthology. Currently, their names are firmly under our hats, but we will be announcing them on publication day, and we'll be celebrating all their work and the book on our social media channels, so look out for that. If you've been subscribed to our e-bulletins, you've probably been following along as we celebrate a different poet each week. Those will be continuing as we focus on the best single poem shortlists as we go into September. So if you haven't subscribed to those, I do recommend them. If you know any 16 to 18-year-olds who are writing poetry, don't forget the Forward e-magazine Creative Critics competition. I will put a link to that shortly, but that is a competition where A-level students can write poems in response to poems on the shortlist, such as Pascale's work. So I'll put the link there. And of course, last but not least, do make sure in your diaries you have written down the 25th of October, which is when we will be celebrating all the shortlisted poets and announcing the winners for the Forward prizes. So save that date. Sadly, this is the end of this series of Forward Meet the Poets, but thank you again, Pascale. Thank you again, Kim. I will log off my video chat now, but I will put the link to that competition and some other bits and bobs in the chat and leave the chat running. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Pascale. Well done.